That was a great interview, Jeff. Now finally, where can I find your website?
I don't have a website.
What?
I just never got around to making one.
You know what? I can't take you seriously with an attitude like that. I am extremely disappointed in you. To not have a website is irresponsible, lazy, you lack ambition. I mean, where's the vision?
Don't be like Jeff. Be responsible. Get out there and shine with a beautiful website by Web Orchard, where they will take care of all of your website needs. Go to theweborchard.com right now and get a beautiful website you deserve.
You know what? Get out.
Hi guys, and welcome to the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. Today we've got a great episode featuring Chris Taylor from SY.Gigs. This is a really cool interview. I've just listened back to it now. I really enjoy it. I love talking about music. I really do. It's one of those things I really enjoy. And this is music of a different nature. This is music of a more sophisticated nature, which incorporates historical buildings. But we'll get into that in a second. Chris is going to explain for you perfectly what is going on with that. But right now I want to tell you about a few things that's going on. We're full swing into the festival season, and there's lots of events going on around Shrewsbury that I'd like to tell you about. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, I don't know what to do over the next few weeks, or I'd like to know what places are, well, I've got a few things for you. Guys, 14th and the 15th, there's going to be a drawn pop-up at the Shrewsbury Museum and Art Gallery cafe space where Stop Cafe was. We all know Drawn, if you listen to the show. It's a great art fair. It's very, very popular. Arts and crafts, creators from far and wide, mostly local though, will gather to share their wares. There'll be workshops. There'll be great talks. It's going to be wonderful. I'm going to try and get there. It sounds really fantastic. Cherie is an absolute legend, great friend of the show. So go to Drawn on the social media pages and take a look at what they've got to offer. On the 21st of June, you've got the dance proms in the park, and the 22nd of June, the proms in the park. Peter Metcalf, great friend of ours, again, been on the show before. We've appeared at the proms. We did a great podcast last year from there. It was wonderful. But this year, it's going to be at the amazing Attingham Park, and it's an experience to behold. So go to Proms in the Park on Facebook or Instagram and book a ticket because they're going to go quickly. The dance proms in the park sounds amazing. So yeah, that's fantastic. That's 21st and 22nd of June. And of course, the amazing, the wonderful, the legacy event, which is Shrewsbury Food Festival, 29th and the 30th of June. We're going to be there with some microphones. We've got plans to do something quite special, but that show is always amazing anyway. So that is Shrewsbury Food Festival, 29th, 30th of June. And of course, we couldn't come here and not talk about what's happening on the 21st of July, 2024. And we're talking about the Column Cricket Club versus All Stars XI happening at Column Cricket Club. The event starts at 12 p.m. It's £10 for adults, £5 for under 18s, and under 3s get free entry. There's going to be an all-star cricket team featuring Gav Cohen, Sam Aston, Mickey Brown and Jamie Tolley, 4 former Shrewsbury Town players. And there's going to be kids entertainment, live music, meet and greets, raffle, food, live podcasts from yours truly. We're going to be there. Fire service demo. There's going to be a bar, activity stalls, and it's all raising money for Little Rascals and the Whistle Foundation. So that is the Column Cricket Club versus All Stars XI on Sunday, the 21st of July, 2024. And we're not finished. If you use the code Biscuit20, you'll get 20% off your ticket prices. So there is lots going on over the next few weeks in and around Shrewsbury. I'm really looking forward to it. It's really hard now. I'm sort of taking a back seat and sort of relaxing a little bit to not get involved with so many events. And it's just truly like that's needed to happen. I've needed to take a bit of a chill because I was trying to do so much that I was kind of burning myself out. But that being said, it's very good to be in that environment and being around so much amazing vibrancy in music. So yeah. Anyway, listen, let's go into this episode with the amazing Chris Taylor. This is a really good podcast. I really love talking about music. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, SY.Gigs with Chris Taylor. Take it away. Hi guys, and welcome to this great episode of the Shrewsbury Biscuit podcast. We have been talking an awful lot about music this season. We've just had Easy Artist on. Then the one before that was Loop Festival. 2 episodes of that, in fact. It's one of my favourite things to talk about. Music is amazing. And if you listen to the Biscuit regularly, you know I also like history and historical buildings. And today's guest brings them together. Chris Taylor from SY.Gigs. We agreed to do this podcast way when the Biscuit was doing a weekly show. And I wanted to honour this podcast because I think he's doing a great job of what he does. So Chris Taylor, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Yeah, pleasure. Great to be here.
Yeah, cool. I'm just going to turn that mic into you a little bit more. There we go.
Okay.
And I'm going to put my phone on airplane mode. I forgot to do that because it can be a bit of a pain sometimes. So Chris... Where'd you hail from originally? Are you a Salopian?
Well, I am indeed, yeah. So Shrewsbury is my hometown, I've clocked a few years up in my hometown. But very special to me, so I'm really keen to talk to you today, really. I suppose a little bit about SY.Gigs, what we've been doing, where we're going, and really, I suppose, why we created the vehicle that is SY.Gigs.
I've done a bit of reading. Katie Rink did a great article on you, which was very handy, because I only knew you as SY.Gigs, and I was like, oh my god, what's his name? So I read that article. I was like, that's Chris. That's really handy. Thank you for that, Katie. You're amazing. But what's your background? What is your job? What have you been doing all this time? I mean, what's your background?
Okay, yeah. So and that's regular, really. I mean, obviously, music doesn't necessarily generate income, and it's not my objective to use SY.Gigs as a vehicle for generating. It's completely not for profit, but. My background is working in the public sector. So I've worked all my life in the public sector in Shropshire, working for Shrewsbury and Acton Borough Council, it used to be, before amalgamation, that created Shropshire Council. So I came from a finance kind of IT background. And then I ended up really program managing. So I was looking after a program called Connecting Shropshire, which ultimately was delivering a rollout of fibre broadband across the rural parts of Shropshire. So did that for probably about 9 years. And at the conclusion of the final contracts, government was taking over the responsibility, and it just seemed a good time to actually step away. So I've actually left employment now at Shropshire Council, and now, solely focused really on doing what I want to do, and a big part of that is SY.Gigs.
Oh, what an amazing opportunity, because, when you speak to people about creativity, whether it's whatever it is, I guess, finding that balance between the work life and the creative side of things is always a huge battle for people. So now you're in an amazing position where you can just focus solely on the thing you're passionate about. No,
absolutely. And I mean, I started the SY.Gigs. I was doing some promotion with some friends previously. And, I think the real trigger point for me, I suppose, as for lots of people and their view on how they were consuming, I suppose, music and where they wanted to go and see music, I suppose COVID had a massive impact on all of us. And I suppose during that time, actually some of my listening tastes changed as well. And as we came out of that, I just thought I'd really like to start maybe looking at putting some music on rather than going back out, getting in the car and having to go to some of the cities where I used to probably listen to most of the music I liked because I couldn't really get what I wanted in Shrewsbury or in Shropshire. It was a case of getting in the vehicle. I thought, well, why not perhaps start to explore maybe doing something for myself? So, yeah, I mean, I was doing a little bit of that, obviously, while I was still working, but even doing a small amount of gigs and doing the promotion around that, the coordination of all the components, it still takes a lot of time. So it is draining, but now, yeah, absolutely. Now I've got a bit more time, and obviously that's allowed me to ramp it up a little bit more.
We documented an awful lot during the pandemic, and when it came to entertainment, we were there. I was at the forefront of it all. I saw it all like change and then slowly change back. Because I mean, when you think of small venues, you think, oh, well, and then when the pandemic happened, there was kind of like, well, you have nothing then. And then we were kind of like, oh, I'll do that. And then we, Beth Heath did the amazing outdoor cinema thing, which was fantastic. The Shropshire Virtual Show at the Cavalier Centre, we were the hosts for that for the day. And everybody had little picketed squares that they could sit in, everything changed. But I think that gave us a drive to actually want to go out and see live music again.
Yeah, I think the key thing with all these significant events, it creates disruption. Disruption always creates an opportunity. And yeah, I just thought that maybe that was the perfect timing, really. So yeah, certainly the early few gigs, because promotion really in the other areas I was working in before was, as I say, with friends who wanted to put other things, including performance poetry on, which I absolutely love. But my real thing was always music. So I just wanted the focus of SY.Gigs to be music. And particularly the opportunity arose really through, as that often is, through incidental conversations and looking at some of the venues. Because Shrewsbury, beautiful, lovely town as it is, there aren't many places to actually put, if you are a promoter, to put music or any other kind of performance stuff on. If you think about the buildings we have in the town, there are some very good corporate spaces, but they are very uninspirational as spaces in their own right. And, I just wanted to do something a little bit different. The best gigs that I always used to go to were always out of the ordinary in unusual spaces. And obviously, the opportunity to use some of the churches just seemed a perfect opportunity. So, started with probably actually St Altman's was the first church we used.
Great sound in there.
Yeah, lovely church. And then that was followed quickly by using the Unitarian. So predominantly those are the two historical churches that I use. There are other promoters that use the Abbey, St Mary's are used as well by some other promoters, but my preferences are those two because I just think acoustically, from a space perspective and just from a visual perspective, they're really, really special places. I think what's really interesting about the Unitarian, for those that don't know, and I think there's lots of people who've come to the gigs who have been in Shrewsbury all their lives and have never been in the church. You walk along the high street and you walk past that building every single week probably, and you just haven't ever been in there. So when you open that up, it's just that lovely feeling of showing somebody a space that they've walked past throughout their life, and then they see it in a completely different light. And when you add that to music, it's just a great feeling.
I've always championed that place. A couple of years ago, I had a great opportunity to produce audio tours all around Shrewsbury. There was like vinyl patches on the floor with QR codes. You could scan your code and then go on the tour. And one of them...
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, have you seen them? Yeah. They need to redo the things because people were using them and they were great. But one of them was outside the Unitarian.
Yeah, it's still there.
Yeah. It's still there, is it?
It's a bit rubbed out, but it's still there.
Yeah, they need to redo them because I think people will start using them now, especially when the summer's coming. And doing that tour was amazing, especially the Darwin of it all and the Wedgwood, and it's like there's so much history there. And I feel like when you throw music into a place like that, you can two things can happen. You can talk about music and you can talk about history. And that offers a great opportunity to learn about two different things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what's been a real great selling point, I suppose. I mean, we've had a few artists coming across from America. We've had them from Scandinavia. We've got one coming from Australia, South Korea. We've brought those artists to Shrewsbury, and a big pull has actually been the story on Darwin, the opportunity to come and perform in a space that Darwin used to go to church in. So, I think, we shouldn't undervalue that Darwin story. And, hopefully next year we'll be doing something special around the festival. Obviously every year there is the festival, and, we'll see whether or not we can shoehorn something in that would be quite exciting.
So when you first start doing this with your friends and you're planning things, whether it's poetry, music, how easily does it come to you from the start? Is it something that you can learn to do very quickly and you're very successful at it, or is it a bit of hit and miss and trial and error?
Yeah, I mean, it's like all things in life, isn't it? You learn as you go along a little bit, you make a few mistakes. I suppose the advantage and the skills that I've had from my professional career have come in enormously well, really. Obviously being a kind of program manager, there's a lot of need to balance commercials in that, manage messaging, manage people. In life we shouldn't underestimate the importance of being personable. And I've certainly found throughout the negotiations, and there's various negotiations obviously in bringing artists, and some of that needs to be persuasive conversation. A key bit is, do you get on with that person? Can you get on with that person? And fortunately, to date, we've had some really lovely people that have come in and performed for us. So, hopefully long may that continue. So, yeah, learnt lots along the way. Not too many disasters, although saying that, we had a heart-stopping moment last week, which was the last gig at St Altman's. We had a band called Tara Clark and Trio who'd come up from Bristol, who've been getting quite a reputation, getting a lot of airplay on Radio 6, BBC, lots of really interesting music coming out of them. And probably half an hour just before we were due to put the support artist on, all the power went in the building. So, yeah, that was one that obviously had to be worked through. And fortunately, we had a solution to it. But there are things that I can't possibly do all of. It's me as the figurehead probably of SY. It's completely DIY, but I'm heavily reliant on some really key partners in making these really successful, and that comes from the technical side. And there's a really great guy called Stavros who is my kind of wingman on the sound front, and he runs a company called Opus Media Productions, and they've been immensely supportive in this journey. If it wasn't for them, these gigs probably wouldn't be happening.
I think you've got to, if you're a showman or you're at the front of being a showman, I feel like that game face is one of the most important cards you can play. I mean, I remember the 90s revival guys a few years ago. They were at the fireworks display, and they had a power outage. So they could play the music, the speakers could work, but they had no lights, no screen.
Yeah.
Like it was just like they were just almost in the dark. I think they had pin-up lights to show them, but they still put on a really good show. And from the next year, they doubled down on everything, and they made sure it all works. So they learned that.
And that's it, isn't it? I think sometimes it's good to fail. I mean, sometimes people are scared of failing, but you always learn something when something goes wrong. When you don't, you just go blindly in thinking you're doing the right thing.
I envy you. I haven't got, so I keep getting told I could probably do this on a stage with a few people, get someone interested, and we do a live interview. And I keep getting asked to do it, but I'm so scared of bombing on a stage, or something not working, or people not turning up. This happened to me a while ago, actually. I did a lecture. It was like a thing in Wellington. And we had other content creators, and I was just going to turn up with my mixers and tell my story. And I remember being sat in this cafe, it's the Orbit Cinema, Wellington Orbit, that's it. And I remember being sat in there and thinking, no one's going to turn up. And I started to panic, and the room filled up. Absolutely. There's pictures of me standing up in front there, terrified. But in my head, I'm too scared to do something like that. So
yeah, I mean,
hats off to you,
Yeah, and it's really pertinent, really, just to touch on that point. Something that I've not really mentioned. I mean, the series that we created, I could see because I'm never comfortable, myself talking about myself, which is
the royal way,
isn't it? But when I created the SY.Gigs, I wanted to kind of create it as a season. So there was a key theme around the season being wanting to call it something, and it seemed appropriate to call it Letting the Light In. And that was twofold, really, in that letting the light in was all about partly down the alternative route. As I mentioned before, I was going out to other places to see my music because I couldn't see the more alternative genres of music, the things that I was really interested in, whether that's ambient music, whether it's electronic music, whether that's jazz music, whether it's post-classical. It wasn't catered for in Shrewsbury. So Letting the Light In was really a nod to that. But second to that was the mental health aspect. And I've always found that music particularly has been a real crux for me in being able to rely on it when I've been in a dark space.
Amen.
So, yeah, I mean, I've struggled, and part of that has been down to maybe the pressures of work, whatever it may be. But certainly over the last, throughout my life, I've struggled with mental health, anxiety and depression. And that probably got more compounded through COVID to a degree, and came out of that, and probably also triggered the aspiration to maybe want to finish my day job and maybe focus a little bit more time into this. So, a key message of SY.Gigs is twofold. Coming to see, trusting the promoter, because a lot of these artists you may not have heard of, but they will be. They are making waves. We had Shabaka Hutchins last year. Type Shabaka Hutchins into your Google search, and you will see. He is probably the most famous kind of flautist now playing. Certainly in the UK and across the world, his shows sell out.
But Andre 3000 is a name I didn't think I'd ever hear doing a flute album.
Well, exactly. And if you look at Andre 3000, Shabaka's, he's worked on that album. There's other artists like Carlos Nino who've done that production on that album. And those are the kind of artists that I'm trying to bring to Shrewsbury, and it's about trusting that promoter. It's about, giving it a go. But at the same time, it's supporting that journey of hopefully music, improving your well-being, and hopefully a community that will grow from these concerts, and we've seen that, it's been well supported. Most of the gigs sell out now. And you can just feel that there is a nice community growing in Shrewsbury around that alternative music genre.
I think music and mental health and emotion is like, they go together, they're symbiotic. I feel like, and I've always encouraged people to just hit a shuffle on, or listen to new music. I use YouTube Music, and there's a setting on there where you can include new music to be played in with your regular mix. And I always do that. And the pandemic was one of those times when I panicked. I was a guy in my 30s, and I'd been listening to the same playlist all my life. And I was kind of like, I need some new music in my life. So this is the moment where I started going back to listening to a lot of what I used to listen to and some new stuff. Yeah. And probably one of the best things I ever did. And I'm a lover of all music. Like, my music taste is so diverse. I will listen to jazz. I will listen to that kind of music you hear in a hotel lobby. I love that kind of stuff. I'll listen to Slipknot. I'll listen. I'm on a bit of a 90s hip hop phase at the moment. Yeah. So, the Weezer I was just listening to as you came in. A big fan of Weezer. Yeah. I love what I love, and it's for me. It's a crash net. It's an emotional and mental health crash net. It's something I can just relax with.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I get that, absolutely. And I'm not dissimilar. I've got a really wide, diverse, eclectic taste in music. But what I've focused particularly for maybe the reasons that I want to be respectful of the spaces that I am actually using. It's taken a long time to develop those relationships and use those spaces and being allowed to curate the space. So it's not just about walking into that church and using the space as it exists. It's about creating the space and turning it into a venue and being respectful. So I want to be, putting an indie band on in one of those church spaces, for me, doesn't work. What I'm trying to do is to create the music to fit the space, so hence the genres that we're really focused on. And those are the genres that I probably, as I said before, I came out from listening in the pandemic. I started stopping listening to lots of lyrical music. I went very much into listening to far more ambient instrumental music. And that's, something that I've just continued to enjoy, and had previously enjoyed, but just have retained that enjoyment. And it just seems to work very well in those spaces. And, the fact that, people keep coming back, and keep saying that they're really enjoying the journey, is testament to continuing the journey, really.
I mean, the small gig is something that Shrewsbury tends to do quite well. I mean, Albert Shared, the Salopian, Frankville, there are a couple of the OPO. They're great places that you can go out and see a band. And I did that the weekend. I went to go and watch Ego Friendly at the Albert Shared, which was wonderful. Great guys. Yeah. And there was also Micro Baby playing the Salopian. But they're like, that is your weekend vibe. It's like, that's your, I'm sorry guys, if you're any of the musicians going to listen to this, that's your day-to-day thing, right? That's what a band does. But to go and listen to a harpist or a pianist at a church is something unique, and it shouldn't be unique. It shouldn't be something that we get to see regularly. Do you know what I mean? It should be something that be brought into the forefront.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I certainly go out and see lots of music myself. I was at the English Bridge Workshop the day after my last gig last week. Seeing a really great show from Upset the Rhythm, who are a promoter from down in London, who put the odd gig up here in Shrewsbury. And that was certainly on the edge noise. Earthball were really great Canadian band. But yeah, for the reasons I've already said, in my view, I wouldn't have felt comfortable necessarily putting them on in a church. But I think, what I'm trying to do is certainly bring a space where people can feel comfortable sitting down and focusing on the music, you talked about Albert Shed, and again, I've been to gigs at Albert Shed, but what I don't want to have is a space that has incidental noise, conversations going on, people that aren't actually into the music. What I'm trying to do is actually bring people in to actually just spend a little bit of time, whether they're comfortable or uncomfortable because it's new to them, is having that experience as if you were going to a film. This isn't about going into a bar, having a few pints, and doing a social from that perspective. This is about focused on the music. So it's a different experience, I think we've all been to lots of gigs where there's nothing worse than the person behind you is not interested in the music. They're being leery, they're being loud, they're being noisy, and they're just disturbing your enjoyment and your experience. So it's absolutely a real focus of creating.
And there's nothing worse when somebody's doing that. When you're trying to focus. I mean, I've been there a few times when someone's been a bit leery, and I'm like, oh, come on, man, I'm trying to do. And, you're right, it is a different experience. If you were going to go and watch an orchestra at a theatre somewhere, you won't be up rowdy, interrupting people's thing. You'd be sat there and enjoying the music together. But if you can incorporate lots of historical, beautiful buildings in with that, that don't get you, that are underused, underutilized, keep that heating going for a reason. Let people see these buildings and let them use them for. I mean, churches were made to sound good. That's the choirs, and they're meant to be big, tall, powerful, but also harmonically beautiful buildings.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you look at the history of the likes of St Albans, that was 900, year 900, that church was actually built. It's the oldest church in the town, and it's changed over the years and obviously been adapted. And if you go in there and look up at the ceiling, you'll see that, there's a wooden roof in there, which obviously wasn't the case. But it's partly why you get the great resonance in there from a musical perspective, because you're not losing that sound. So again, it makes all the difference, really. So a key focus, obviously, on these concerts is, curating the lights, the sound. It's not to say we've got a bar, Glue, our key partners, Glue are a great company.
Shout out to Robin, how are you, man?
So, Robin's been great. He really understands the value of it. A proportion of the takings from that bar contributes, we were talking previously, weren't we, about how we can make these financially work, because it's tight. They're pop-up gigs. It costs a lot of money to bring the artists. They don't just go back the same day if they live in New York. They've got to stay here. So we'd like to put them somewhere really nice, like Rhubarb. So they get a really good experience, because it's about telling a story that these artists can do for us about Shrewsbury, which will then hopefully permeate in their little network and give us an opportunity to bring some other artists as well.
I was watching the Green Book, I think it was, an amazing film. But the main character is like a bit of a diva.
Oh, yeah.
He's a bit of a diva. I know it's a story about a completely different thing, but he walks in, he's like, I am a musician. He walks in. Have you dealt with a lot of this? Is there a lot of ego in this that you have to deal with, professionally speaking?
Yeah, no, professionally speaking, I'd say I've been really, I've certainly had experience. I've certainly had experience in previous collaborations that I talked about before. But no, since we've done SY.Gigs, everybody has been incredibly humble and really wonderful, and you've got to remember that I'm telling them a story before they even get to agree to come. It's very much talking about that it's a community initiative. It's very much aimed at not for profit. It's not about me making anything. I don't take anything out of this. It's very much about them getting an opportunity to be able to experience a really special concert with that focus that I've talked about. So yeah, everybody to date has been exceptionally wonderful, and hopefully long may it continue.
I think you offer something quite cool, actually. An opportunity that not a lot, this is going to sound really ridiculous, but not everybody gets the opportunity to be sophisticated. They don't, right? I don't get many opportunities where I can sit, drink a glass of wine and listen to live classical music. It's just not in my day-to-day routine.
Yeah.
So to have that opportunity, your next event, I'll be there with a glass of wine and let me be there. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, well, yeah, and that'd be great, and certainly, as I said, the genres, and, we do a little bit of post-classical, and, we had Shida Shahabi last year, who was really, really exceptionally great. That's probably the kind of benchmark of the kind of post-classical stuff. We may do a really trying to work on it in the background is, we're already kind of fully booked for this year. So next year is already being worked through, and, there is what they call a piano day every year. So the 88th day each year is dedicated to piano day. So that's 29th of March next year. So we're certainly already in the early throes of thinking about what that could look like. But as I say, each gig is quite different. We had, what you'd probably call a bit more jazzy, trip hop, electronic, if you like, Portishead last week, which was Tara Clarken with, kind of electric folk from Jerez who came up from Bishop's Castle. Because I always try, if I can, is to try and get the support, if it kind of ticks the boxes for me locally. And then, next month we will have group listening. Now, group listening are coming up from Cardiff, just had a really lovely album called Walks. And if you know Stephen Black, who is in the band called Group Listening, he's got a kind of indie band called Sweet Baboo. So he's had a lot of success with that. So, again, that will be a really nice concert at the Unitarian next month.
Sounds wonderful. It really does. How do you scout your music?
Another really good question. So it's a variety, actually. I mean, a lot of it has come down to me and my listening tastes. But as the community has grown, it's been great to have people who have come who've put recommendations. And a couple of those artists, include Tara Clarken, that was through one of the people who'd been to the gig, making me aware, and I wasn't aware until they came, that the two of the boys in that band came originally from Shrewsbury, so they were from Wakeman School, and then obviously they went off, ended up in Bristol, and have forged their band, Tara Clark. And so, some of it has been through recommendations, but now obviously as SY.Gigs has evolved, and some of those artists that I touched upon have gone back and shared some of that information within their kind of social groups. Obviously, there's been artists now approaching. So there's already a long list for next year. We're booked up for this year with the artists. So yeah, exciting times.
I feel like when it comes to things like this, I do have experience firsthand with planning a big event with lots of moving parts. And I feel like there are three stages. There's the stage when things are mentally constructed, and when you're making the emails and you're writing and you're like, ooh, can you come to the thing? And then there's the planning of the event where you're getting whatever lighting and sound you need, and then there's being at the event and making sure it runs.
Yeah.
Which is your favorite part from A to B to C? Is your
that's a good question. It's really I mean, the latter, it's really difficult to enjoy it when you're actually in the space on the evening, which is ironic, really, when you've put such a lot of time and effort, but you're always so conscious, and I'm very determined to make sure that everybody has a really great time. So probably the actual event itself can be a little bit stressy, as I mentioned before.
Like your wedding day, don't get to focus.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. I think probably the very early stages of starting to map out what things could look like. And when, as I had an email earlier this week of some agent who came back to me, I'd put a feeler out for an artist that is really quite successful, getting a lot of radio play. And he's recognized that there's a real opportunity and he would like to come. So I think once you've got that hook in, that's the most exciting for me. In the same way Shabaka said very early on, when I knew that he was dropping his saxophone and wasn't going to play that anymore, and he was going down the flute route. And I said, how do you fancy coming to Shrewsbury and just maybe doing? So that was his very, very, very first flute show in the world. It was in Shrewsbury. So, just getting in at an early point, I think that's the thing that really kind of drives me, really.
I really like that. I like that because I've put myself in that position. When you when it works, when it doesn't work, we did Pod Aid 2 years in a row, the 24-hour live podcast, 24 guests for every hour. We had cameras, thanks to Charles Denscombe. We had venues to sort out. I had a team that was spanned across the globe. It was nuts. And like, I remember when I get a guest confirmed, I'd be like, wow, like that feeling of electric you get. Like Charlie Adler's coming on my show, or Jeffrey Wiseman, or these amazing Charlie Adler's coming down to do a drawing with us while we talk. I mean, these kind of things, it feels so powerful. But at the same time, on the flip side, when things go wrong, it's kind of like that dread is something that I just don't want to feel again, because I felt that, and that is, especially talking from a mental health point of view. Talk about peaks and troughs, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, we wouldn't be able to, or I wouldn't be able to do this. I've already mentioned Stavros, who's incredible support in bringing these events to bear. But, Robin at Glue Glue, being able to just give Robin the brief, just run a really nice bar, which he's able to do, but there's always the volunteers, there's a whole bunch of volunteers who are doing the stewarding, helping. There's people sharing lots of stuff on social media, because, I can only share it, as you'll know, social media wise, I can only share it within my circle. I need the ripple to continue to move outwards, so I've got to get that message out. And then another thing that's quite important to me, I want lots more younger people. When I first started this and I looked at the audience, there was a lot of grey hair in that audience.
And I think it's important to keep that kind of music. There's a lot of heritage behind it.
Yeah.
And got to keep that going. Got to keep it going.
Absolutely. And it's really, trying to persuade young people to maybe explore that. So there's some great advocates who've come along, and started to share that, and you've seen that grow, and the younger generation starting to come through, and I'm keen to work with a couple of other, institutions, and trying to work maybe with the Hive. Had a good conversation with them quite recently about, maybe there's some activities where we can bring young people in just to explore and experience, what it's like to actually put a gig on, what are the components, because ultimately, music has to continue. I'm certainly not young in years. I have a real passion for music, and I will probably continue. I mean, you're never too old for music, right? But you certainly want young people to start grasping that and getting involved with that. And whether that's one of my gigs, or whether it's a good, a gig at the Hive, or whether that's a gig down at the English Bridge Workshop, I don't really care. But you certainly want kids to be getting enthused and excited by it.
Yeah. And there are a few people that are trying to make that happen. Peter Metcalf did a great job with the proms. It was a bit of a disaster. I remember the rigging on the stage for it. None of his fault. Like, it was because of circumstances, but he held it well, and he did a good event. And sitting there and listening to like the Jurassic Park music getting played by an orchestra in person actually made me tear up. I'm not even joking. Like, it was just to hear that and feel that in person. It's the music we've all heard over time and time again, but to hear it played that way, it transported me back to being a little nipper, being excited going to see the cinema with my dad. Do you know what I mean? That's where it took me, and that's and
that's it. For lots of people, some people just don't think outside of the boundary points, as you said earlier on, about the music and the genres of music that they've normally listened to. So sometimes you can surprise yourself by maybe just exploring that, because, music's an emotional journey, so it's certainly worth, exploring that. And sometimes, having somebody actually curate that for you to take away the what do I need to listen to, and just trusting the promoter is a good way to start, isn't it?
It's just saying yes to the universe, just be welcoming things in. I mean, I always tell this story, but I think it's really important to my sort of my development in ways of music. I've always been a big fan of rock and hip hop. They're my main vibes, but I could never sort of gel with Slipknot. I don't know what it is. I just couldn't do with it. I thought it was a bit too hard for me. I don't know. And when I was doing the radio last year, Naughty Talk, we had Ryan Berger listening in America, and he'd give me grief for my music choices on Discord live as the show was going on. The one week I sort of stopped that. I was like, right, Ryan, you give me 4 songs then, and I'll play them, and we'll just laugh at your choice. And he ended up with his Ryan's Corner every week, right? You give me 4 songs to play every week.
Right idea.
And I would listen to my playlist, because it was only a once a week show. I wanted to make sure it was right. And he kept sending in Slipknot. And I remember listening to what's the song? Slipknot. I remember listening to a Slipknot song, and this is from a guy that don't listen to Slipknot. I put it in my car, and it made me cry. On my way, it made me cry. And yeah, it's a very powerful moment. I feel like that's just me saying yes to the universe. And Jules Holland was a good one for me as well. Thrown on, because you don't know what you're going to get on that show. And that was a show where you'll have Jamiroquai in one corner, you'll have Stormzy in another corner,
Yeah,
and you'll have beautiful harp music. Or,
well,
you know.
Interestingly, I mean, I think this week he's got Gunvaya on there, who is an artist that I had been hoping and was close to, but we just didn't quite make it, who was actually on this week's show. So yeah, it's a good example that, you know, coming to a gig in Shrewsbury doesn't mean to say that it's not going to be somebody that's going to be hopefully on their way up, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really exciting. I'm really passionate about it for a number of reasons, you know, mental health being a key part of it, but
has it helped?
Has it helped me? I think it has helped me in some regards, and in others, for the reasons that we touched upon, when things don't go quite right, sometimes it can actually have an opposite. But I think it has, for the simple fact that it has brought lots of special people in to my kind of universe, and I've actually been able to create some really nice friendships from it. And, you know, it's allowed those people to also share some of their stories, you know, to openly talk about their own mental health issues, and to sometimes know that you're not the only one, and it's not unusual to maybe have some of those anxieties that I suffer from is a really helpful thought. I
think understanding that it's kind of normal to feel anxious is an important one, because I feel like we're told not to act up, aren't we? We were told not to, especially as blokes, we're told not to show emotion or not to tell people your inner truths and things like this. But you can, absolutely can, and you can be as honest as you want. You know, within reason, don't go hurting people. But I'm saying is that you can tell people about you and be honest and open.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I learned that probably towards the end of my career. And, you know, the trouble is when you're in any organisation, I'm sure there's lots of listeners who are in this situation where you feel that you're on a career pathway and actually talking about your mental health and that you suffer from it, and some of that is coming from a work perspective, is not probably the easiest thing to do, for fear that it's actually going to impact your career pathways. Yeah. And I think that's a terrible thing. And I think there's too many organisations out there that play that card of, yeah, we really care about your mental health. But when you talk about it, then unfortunately there's a kind of mark that goes against your name. And I think as employees, I think we just got to, and as employers, we've got to open up and talk a little bit more and make it a general conversation rather than something that's just within your performance review once a year, you know?
Yeah, we've already been in that workplace scenario where they're like, there's a number you can ring.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. But that's, you know.
Cheers.
But yeah, so it, you know, going back to these concerts, you know, it's great when people turn up and just say, I really get what you're talking about mental, and they talk to you a little bit about that, you know, and that just allows you. So you're in a safe space, really. It's a cool thing.
Do you find yourself looking around at the buildings in Shrewsbury and thinking about what you do and thinking, what building am I going to use next? I'll tell you what. Have you got like a top 3 buildings for you? I mean, do you have like a professional top 3 buildings in Shrewsbury, or a 183 that you like? I mean, how's that work?
Well, I mean, at the moment, I'm very comfortable just using those 2 that I've mentioned, you know, for the reason that they are unique to SY.Gigs. There's not many other people that use those. There are other promoters that use some of the other spaces, and I just feel for the music that I put on, that they work really well. There's definitely, a couple of buildings, and I've continued to have conversations about that. You know, it's probably not necessarily appropriate to say which ones those are, but I think they would make for great spaces. You know, again, they're really historical in the town. And it's another way for those people that are the custodians of those buildings to open them up. You know, that's why the Unitarian St. Altmans have been great and see the value, because it allows people to actually go into their spaces and see let the community, because ultimately these are church spaces that historically have always been the heart of the community. We've evolved, you know. It's not
something that I've always championed.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm not a religious person, but they are great community centres. They bring people together, like you said, you know.
Yeah. So just got to continue those conversations and see where that goes. But there'll always be, for me, there'll always be indoor spaces. I'm not really terribly interested. I mean, certainly, the flax mill is certainly an area that we've been to look. They're going to have to be a little bit more commercially minded if they want those spaces used. I personally feel that at the moment the pricing structures that they're looking at aren't going to encourage local promoters to use those spaces and let that change. And the most obvious space, if you think about the flax mill, to use is the dye house. And the dye house at the back of the flax mill, wonderful space, and I love its rawness. Yeah. It would be a great space, but there isn't much sound insulation from a noise perspective, so you've got to think about what's the impact there for the community outside of that.
Are you going to bring the building down?
Well, I think the aspiration is still, I think rightly so, is to retain its integrity and maybe to, put it on the refurbishment list. But, it's taken a long time to get where the current building is, and if you look at
it was Hank Marvin they did before. They did like a festival there before, didn't they?
Yeah, they've done the Drawn Collective, have been there.
The Drawn have been there. We've hosted a show from there before.
Yeah.
I do love that. It is a great space. It really, really is. And we've recorded many times there, actually. Yeah. I remember when they first opened it. I interviewed, was it John Hitchin? One of the Hitchin brothers.
Right.
We sat and one of my first, oh my God, a very early photograph of me with my old blue microphone, I sat there with my massive mixer on this dusty table in the middle of in the corner of the dye house before anybody had used it before.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I used to go up there, in my professional role, because it was, we had a close relationship with Shropshire Council when I was working for them. So, yeah, we were lucky to have access to there, similar to yourself, very early on.
You could tell them to sort the fibre right around here, if you like, because literally this building is the only building in this whole area that hasn't got fibre.
I'll leave a telephone number for somebody that might be able to help you when I leave.
We're literally thinking of moving house because I want to get back doing live podcasts.
Yeah.
And I can't do that with the internet we've got here. It's like,
there's a whole separate conversation to talk about as to why that is the case on this particular site, which I do probably know the history to, but happy to tell you about.
How far ahead are you planning with your stuff? I mean, are you
2025, yeah. I'm already into 2025. So we're booked up for this year. So we've got, I only do, just to clarify, 1 gig a month, and that's enough for me. For the reasons it takes time, mental health, all the rest of it, really.
Oh, 1 a month is pretty good. Some people do like festivals once a year, Yeah.
But next year, we're still thinking, or I'm still thinking as to what's the number for next year. Because originally I was going to do year 1, season 1. This year we're in season 2, year 2. And then next year was potentially going to be a little bit of a festival, possibly within one of the churches or maybe 2 of the churches. That isn't going to happen for next year. I think there's still some thinking to go around that. So, next year now is really still in the early stages of planning. And as I say, there's a long list. So, yeah, it will probably end up being booked. Just got to decide the numbers of events really for next year. It may actually be a few less than the 10 that have been this year, because it takes time.
Over the years of doing my podcast, Thor Skin and USOC with Tom Bruno over there in Vermont, love you, Tommy. We always had 2 white whales, 2 amazing guests that we thought we'd never get the chance to speak to. One was Ralph Garman. He is one of the greatest voice actors on the planet, the co-host of Hollywood Babylon with Kev Smith. And the other one was Billy West, one of the greatest voice actors ever to walk the face of the earth. He did the voices for Futurama, he did Bugs Bunny and Space Jam. He's done he's a red M&M. He's done everything, right? We got to interview those people, and it was like 2 of the greatest moments for my podcast. They were like the people that I always want. Is there a musician like that for you? Is there someone that you would always want to bring to on your gig? Yeah?
There isn't a musician, and I'm still working on him, but as to whether it'll ever happen, I don't know. I'm actually going to see him again. I've seen him a few times, been to Berlin to see him in a place called Funkhaus, which is this lovely East German radio station building in Berlin. A really, really cool space. Been fortunate enough to see him there. Where he's got a studio. He'll be back over. I mean, his concert that we're going to at the Barbican this summer, I think the tickets went on sale 2 years ago. and I think they're all sold out. They sold out probably in 2 years ago. So trying to get somebody like that is going to be obviously a little bit of a challenge. But you never say never, I mean, you've always got to have some goals, haven't you? Some aspirations. So he would probably be that artist, and his name's Nils Fram. So look him up. He's an exceptional pianist, electronic composer. He's got a new album coming out with some schoolboy friends of his called Non Keen. I think that's coming out in June. So really looking forward to that.
That sounds great. Keep going for it. Keep going for it. Never give up that dream. There are people that I thought I would never get to speak to, or there are things I would never. I mean, I never thought I'd be able to get to do half of the shit I do with this show. Honestly, it's amazing. Sometimes if you just have that faith and that belief, some people ride on that passion. That people really do just love that. Keep.
Yeah, I think so, and I think people, the people that have been, I think they really get it. I think the audience get it. The people that have certainly been. I mean, it's testament to the fact that most people who've been have come back again. So. Good. Yeah, it's a nice journey to be on.
How can my listeners help you? If they're listening to this now, how would you like them to help you develop in what you're doing?
Well, I think the most important thing is share the message. I mean, I'm out there on the social media. Certainly on Instagram is the primary source. So it's SY.Gigs. You can find out the journeys all on there as to who's been, what's coming next, really. Give it a go. I mean, certainly if you're local, I mean, we've had people come up from London, across from Wales, down from Leeds, all over the place to the concerts. So, we're in the centre of Shrewsbury. The gigs are in the centre of Shrewsbury. It's easy to get to. If you're interested in exploring some of the things you've heard about, get onto the Instagram page. There's a profile link there that will show you all the gigs that are coming up, give you a little bit of background on the press as well. And you can just get yourself a ticket. The ticket pricing, it's around about £15 for adult. I've introduced a concessionary ticket for anybody that's under 25 at £11. That's about as low as I can go because, the costs are literally as high as they are to cover the artist, accommodation, the sound, the church hire. But, the money is all going into the activity of SY.Gigs. I don't need it. Owing to the fact that I've got 41 years in the pension pot from Shropshire Council, so they're giving me a pension, so I don't need to make money, and it's not my intention to make money out of this. So I think it's really just share the message and join the journey.
Yeah, honestly, I think the message that you're selling, I say selling, you're sending out there is very important. It's very important, when it comes to, number one, like I said before, saying yes to the universe. If you don't listen to piano or harp music or flute music, why not? Why not just sit and just try it out? Because you never know. And also, the link between music and mental health is great. And there's so I can go on. Utilize, like I said, utilizing buildings that sit there empty otherwise, bringing musicians from far and wide into Shrewsbury and championing the town. And there are so many reasons why this is an absolute winner. And also young people, give this music a go because it is the fabric of the universe, this music. It really is. It makes everything go when you think about classical music.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the artists that we have all been young at some point. They've all grown up with the music and they've continued to play their music. And what they're doing now is in lots of cases, absolutely fabulous. So I think there is something for everybody. I think a key message for me is maybe just give it a go, trust the promoter, and hopefully at some point we'll see you in one of the churches.
Brilliant. Right, are you up for playing a quick game? We play on this show every week. Yeah? Right, so here we go. It's time for...
Why, it's random, innit?
Right, so this is the random minute. I'm going to ask you I'm going to ask you questions for a minute. Answer as many as you can. I got last time I did it with Easy Artist, I left my stopwatch going for 3 hours and 33 minutes. I've still got it on here. It's mad. And I sent a picture of it to him. That would have been a lot of questions.
Yeah, wouldn't it, Just? I thought you were going to say 100 questions, so I'm glad it's not 100 questions.
I used to play on Newsuck. We used to play the game called the Gauntlet, and it was 3 different rounds. It was random object, then it was we played different rounds, and the last one was like 100 questions. Answer as many as you can for a minute. Answer as many as you can of these. This is from a website called Learn Hip. I changed from teambuilding.com because we use the same random question number generator. People were getting the same questions. So I will start the stopwatch as soon as you start answering the first question. Okay, you right with this?
Yeah, give it a go.
All right, okay. And the first question is, do you try to support local businesses?
Yes.
What really makes you mad?
People that are not respectful.
Nice. What's the longest journey you've ever been on?
Longest journey, probably to Los Angeles.
Nice. Are you afraid of any animals?
No.
Nope. And what's the biggest company in your country?
The biggest company in my country? Oh, God,
That's
I don't know. I don't know.
Virgin.
Yeah, let's go with Virgin, yeah.
How would you describe your style of home?
Comfortable, terraced. No, semi-detached, not terraced, sorry.
Do you enjoy buying gifts for people?
No, I hate it. I always struggle.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. How will you spend your time when you retire?
I'm here, I'm doing it, SY.Gigs.
What kind of clothes suit you?
Oh, a variety. Anything that's hip.
One last question. Have you ever been on TV?
Yes.
Well, there we go. That was...
Well, it's random, isn't it? Huh?
And by the way, I'm not doing the... I was trying to do... I was trying to shoehorn just randomly... I got this from Rick Glassman, who does this amazing thing where he just clicks and then he puts like an advertisement right in the middle of an interview. And I was trying to emulate that, and I was like, I'm not rude like that. I can't. He's not rude. He's just very ballsy with it, and I don't have that about me. So I'm going to record an advert, Adam, and I'll put it halfway through this podcast because I just can't do that. I can't stop someone in their flow. I'm like, do you like cricket? Because so we'll throw something in there. Yeah, so this is very cool what you're doing. What's the biggest challenges for you with this? I mean, is this something that you're really struggling with that maybe there's somebody out there listening that could help you with?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a call out that I regularly do as part. I use Substack and obviously do a newsletter. And again, to the listeners, if you go on to the SY.Gigs Instagram feed, get onto the profile. There is a link tree, and you can sign up for the newsletter, which is a Substack. So I periodically will put a kind of a call out there if there's some help we need. Volunteering, I think we've got a few volunteers now that are certainly helping on the evenings, stewarding and etc. There's always there always tends to be occasionally a thing or two that I need. I think sharing the message is the key one. Marketing, I spend a lot of time, as we all do these days, on social media. I could do with a bit less time on it, if I'm brutally honest. But
it's full-time job.
It's a kind of personal story, though, isn't it? I think that's the trouble. I've thought about, could I get somebody to do a little bit of this for me? But I think the story that we've talked about tonight, the mental health, the journey that I've been on, how important it is to get the messaging right. It's tricky to hand that over, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I'm always interested in ideas, of what people think, ideas of what people want to hear, within the realms of what I'm doing. Obviously, I'm not going to bring Taylor Swift, so sorry to disappoint all you Swifties out there, but that's not going to be something that's going to be happening. But, I mean, if there is something that you think kind of fits within genre boundaries that I've talked about, yeah, drop me a note. If there's something you think you can add value to, absolutely do so. But sharing the message about SY.Gigs is probably the most important thing.
What are your thoughts on music fusion?
Crossover boundaries between. So I haven't really got a view on it. I mean, I think music is there to be played with. It's entirely up to artists to explore those, and if they're mixing it up, I haven't got an issue with that at all. I mean, the beauty is there is that much music in the world that I think we can all find little bits that we want out of that, really.
I think it's getting to a point now when you hear something unique now, it's really something special, because I feel like, we've been through such an explorative era of music. If you look back from the 30s right through to now, music has evolved in such a short space of time when you think about it so quickly. So now when you hear something like really like groundbreaking, I keep forgetting that rapper's name. There's a rapper, and on his video he's like smoking a cigarette and he's almost doing like a Verve kind of walking down the street thing, and he's rapping about these.
Ashko.
He's almost doing that sort of style, but he's rapping about the most raw things, and people are going crazy for him.
Right, yeah.
And it's because he's so unique and so he's not vibrant. He's not got no flashy back dancers. He's just raw in like, and that's kind of unique, you know. I'm like that's, but it's been done before. But like when it comes to something that's brand new.
I mean, the thing is that it starts as brand new, and then of course you end up with a number of artists that will probably start to pick up on that. It's a bit like there's quite a few bands probably over the last 3 or 4 years that have actually just done, quite indie sounding, that have just used spoken word over the top. You know, you've seen lots of bands actually adopt that approach, you know, rather than a singing voice through their lyrics through the song. You know, they've approached a more standard performance poetry aspect to it almost, you know. But I think that's the way music will always be. You know, people will actually pick things up from the heritage of music. They'll adapt that, and you know, having crossover, I've got no issue whatsoever. You know, it's not necessarily going to tick all my boxes, but there's going to be somebody out there who's going to love it.
Yeah, I was thinking about jazz flute, hip hop. There's so, I mean, there are so many different things you can do, of course. But yeah, I feel like it'd be really good. And you know, I was in this amazing conversation at Loop Festival with the guys from the Uptown Monotones, and we're talking about, because they've been going since the early 90s, and I was talking about Rivers Cuomo and Weezer, of course. Like I was talking about. That band seemed to get better with age. Last year they released an album per season, 4 albums in 1 year, and each one was a banger. These guys have been going since 94, 93, 94. And I feel like, you know, you still talk about musicians that have been doing this for so long, maybe they're not on the radar anymore. You pull someone in like that that's got that much talent for that long, and no matter where they play, they're going to be absolute fire because of that experience.
Yeah, no, I think there's lots of. There's a guy that's just released his 3rd album, which is an artist that I've loved, and he's far more indie. It's not necessarily an artist that I would be putting on myself, but Michael Head was in a band called Shack and the Pale Fountains from Liverpool. He's now got his own band, Michael Head and the Red Elastic Band. And he's been probably getting his most success when he's an artist that probably started out in the 80s, you know, and he was really hailed as a really kind of indie kid and the next big thing. Had some success, went a little bit off the rails, has come back really strongly, and I think his actual album that came out last week, I think it's in the top 10 at the moment.
Amazing. Making music for the sake of making music, and I think that's the most important thing. I feel like Arctic Monkeys is a prime example that made 2 banger albums, became massive, grew egos, and started making utter garbage. I'm sorry. Those first 2 Arctic Monkeys albums are just special for me. And then whatever they made afterwards was kind of like, this isn't the Arctic
You don't
Monkeys.
like AM?
I think there's like 1 song in there.
Yeah.
Are You Mine? I think it's probably the only one I kind of like out of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting again, aren't they? You know, lots of artists that kind of get to a platform where they can experiment. I quite like that, you know. In a way, it's always difficult, isn't it? Because it kind of leaves some of the original fan base, you know, scratching their head. You know, we talked about Andre 3000 before. You know, all those kind of rap fans, you know, probably thought, what the hell's going on when he comes out with a flute album? But, you know, in a way, I think it's really, really brave of the artist to actually just explore something.
He retired from music and just wanted to,
Yeah.
He did a Damon album.
Then he had to play the flute, though.
Yeah. And made a #1 album.
Yeah.
Not #1 flute album. It went to #1 in the charts.
Yeah.
People loved it. I think Beastie Boys are a weird one to pull out of the air, but they looked at what they were doing and they're like looking at the frat boys smashing cans on their head and like, well, look what we're doing. And they went and they learned to play instruments.
Yeah,
and that's where Sabotage comes from. Is them just learning to play the I mean, they've got an amazing thing. I think it
comes back to that, you know, that point about disruption, isn't it? You know, it always creates new opportunities, isn't it? Something changes, and it's just inventive, isn't it? So that's the beauty. It will keep on reinventing and keep on changing, you know, and long may it continue. I mean, I ask friends periodically, you know, what would you rather have? Would you rather have all the music up to this point in your life, or would you just prefer to actually just have the music that comes forward? So you stop today and you can have everything that's preceded it, or are you more excited about what's coming? I would always choose the forward view, because I think there's always something really, really special coming, and you can have it all the way forward. Would that be your choice, or would it be all the way back?
And that's the thing, isn't it? We're just in news stories now of Blur playing Coachella and the crowd sort of shunning them, basically. And you got Damon Albarn going, "What are you doing? I'm not coming back here." And they're like, "Oh, I don't care." And you're talking about young people not listening to the music of yesterday, all different genres. I feel like that's the radio's fault. I think there's a lot too much Lizzo, Taylor Swift, and Pink being played. I like Pink, but it's just too much. It's too much. Play music that's diverse. When I was younger, you'd get Aerosmith, and you'd get Limp Bizkit, and you'd get whatever. You get this, you get Aqua, or whatever it is. They play all sorts of different stuff on the radio, and that's how you pick up your taste, your musical taste. And it just seems to be so honed in on like a handful of artists and a certain style of music. It's just
well, yeah. And I mean, I suppose the question is why do they get more play? And it's probably because they're getting played more because maybe the pluggers are paying a little bit more. It all depends on the commercial radio, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why when I did the radio, I did Naughty Talk. It was Naughty's music, and the site owner was like, "You can keep the swears in. I want to keep the swears." I was like, "Okay, all right, that's fine. Yeah, we'll do that." But I want to play Naughty's music, but I want to go on the emphasis as I'm going to play the alternative stuff more and the pop stuff a little bit less. And sort of turn the dial a little bit, because that's okay. I've got one more bit to do, and then we'll finish this up. I'm very sorry for this. Isn't an ego-driven thing. This was asked for. The last thing, and sorry to put you on the spot, is:
Are you ready? Questions for Alex.
So one of the things people asked for, I keep forgetting about that thing, is, do you have a question for me? And it can be about anything. Just putting you on
a question for you?
For me, yeah, this was asked for.
How long have you lived in Shrewsbury?
Since 2017. I was born here.
Oh, okay.
I was born here, grew up in Telford, and then I moved to Wrexham. Met the wrong girl, and then moved to Telford, met my wife, and then I decided that Shrewsbury was probably a better place to bring up a child. No disrespect to Telford, I just thought it was just a nice move for us to make, and we did. And I've always said that this is the only town I've lived in where I felt proud to live here.
Yeah.
When you look around, you're like, "Oh, I live here," Never done that before about a place.
Yeah, I mean, I've never, talked a little bit about, I've always lived in Shrewsbury. I've never needed to career-wise. I've always been able to, continue my career in Shrewsbury. I didn't need to move away. Or I suppose there was, times, like we all do when we're younger, thought about going to the big city, having that experience. But whenever I come back to Shrewsbury and I've been away, yeah, it's always a nice feeling, isn't it? It always feels good.
Yeah, I do love coming back here when we go away. One final thing, what's the next gig? Where can people find out about future gigs? And how can they buy tickets? I think very, very important.
Very, 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 very important. I've talked about SY.Gigs and where you can actually go and get some information.
I'll put the link at the bottom of the readout, so you can go to the Instagram and follow, please, guys. Whilst you listen to the podcast.
That'll be good. So the next gig basically is on the 28th of June, which is the group listening gig. So that will be basically at the Unitarian Church, and then we've got one in July, 24th of July. We've got Greg Folk coming, which will be great. Got another one on 6th of September. But rather than me just listing them out, just go on to the link tree, and you'll be able to actually see all the concert dates there, and follow the links off there, and you'll be able to get a ticket.
Brilliant. Well, I'd love to come to the next one. I really would. I'd love to come and drink
You're more
wine.
than welcome, my friend.
And I'll be there. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's been really genuinely great speaking to you. I loved doing that bit at the end, because it shows you know what you're talking about music. So this guy knows. So let him take your musical palettes and leave them in his hands, because I'm sure wherever he plans, you'll have a great time. Thank you for chatting to me today.
Thank you.
Stick around, guys. I'll do a little outro. And bro.
Catch you soon.
Cheers. What a great interview. Thank you so much, Chris, for coming on and being such a great guest. I hope you enjoyed that. You know what? It's just made me feel like this season's been so wonderful. I've really enjoyed it so far, and I hope you guys are too. And, there are ways you can let me know whether you do or don't enjoyed the season you're listening to. If you listen to the Shrewsbury Biscuit lately, I'd love to encourage you guys to give us a quick review. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can do a review whilst you're listening there. And those reviews, they really help me develop the show moving forward. So I'd love to tell me what you enjoy about the show, what you'd like to see more of, if there are any guests you'd like us to get on. I'm already formulating season Charlie. Got some really fun ideas for season Charlie. Got some great guests lined up. If there's somebody that you'd like to feature, or if you'd like to feature, get in touch. Leave a review, then get in touch. You can email me at shrewsburybiscuitpodcast@gmail.com. We have the new website ready to launch soon. I'll make a big noise about that when it's out. It looks amazing. Web Orchard really are wonderful. We got the advert at the beginning of the podcast. Couldn't champion them more. This new website has had a lot of love put into it. It is perfect, and I can't wait to share it with you. It's really good. But the only way you'll know if it's out is if you follow us on social media. So if you're not already, please give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I do Twitter, but only like once every 6 months. So Facebook and Instagram are probably our best ones. So give us a follow on there. I'm not going to whittle on too much because I think this is perfect. It's just great the way it is. And you guys are wonderful for tuning in. So thank you so much. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week. So thank you for listening. Peace out.